Hi everyone, this is Mary, you're in Mary Reads, and in today's video I decided to tell you about 7 of my favorite classic books. I love reading classics, and most of my books on my bookshelves now are classical books, and that's not only because I'm trying to be a snob and pretend that I'm smart, it's because we don't have enough space, and classical books are usually not a hit or miss. You know for sure that they're going to be good. So that's what I buy, and I usually tend to like the books. So I have been reading classical literature for a while, and I usually am not scared of big classical books. I think I got myself used to reading them, so I decided to show you 7 of my favorite ones. And the first book is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This is the novel about a young woman, Elizabeth Bennet, who meets Mr. Darcy, a proud friend of the kind and very agreeable Mr. Bingley. She first doesn't like Mr. Darcy. She thinks he's too proud. She thinks he's not very nice as a person. And he's not super happy about her either. So they don't like each other from the first sight. They actually hate each other, but their feelings change as they find out more about one another. What I like about this book is that it's so easy to read. It's such a good and nice story. It does have a happy ending, and it is a great classical book to read if you want to read something absolutely and definitely 100% good, but also if you don't want to read anything hard, if you want to relax your brain. I watched the movies, I read the book a couple times, and I love everything about it. And there are a lot of books that were written and inspired by Pride and Prejudice, a lot of movies that were inspired by Pride and Prejudice. And this is just an amazing novel, and I would say that if you're starting with Jane Austen as an author, that's the first book to read. I read all of Jane Austen's novels, and Pride and Prejudice is still my favorite. It's the first one I read, and I love everything about it. The second book on my list is Sister Carrie by Theodore Dreiser, and this book changed my life. It made me cry, it made me shiver, it made me, I don't know, my soul shattered. I just think that this book is an amazing story about the human nature. It shows how much we are dependent on money and status, how much we are willing to do for it, and how drastically our life changes when this status and money go away from us. So this is the story about a young girl, Carrie, who comes to live with her sister in Chicago. She first finds a job at a shoe factory where she makes like $4, I think, or $5 a week, and she has to give like $4.50 for food and rent to her sister and her sister's husband. And she realizes that this is not how she wants to live. She doesn't have any money to save. This is a very boring job without any growth prospects. And she decides to meet with Charlie Drouet. This is the man she met on the train, and he's the one who introduces her to a higher society. He's not a super rich gentleman himself, but he has enough money. He brings her to the restaurants, he brings her to the theaters, and this is how she gets introduced to a better life. She stops working, she moves out of her sister's apartment, and she lives with him. And this is when she meets Hurstwood. This is a manager of a very famous and very high society saloon. And he has a lot of money. He's married, he has 2 kids, he has an amazing house. So he has a good life, but he falls in love with Carrie and he runs away to New York City with her. All of his money is gone because it was written on his wife, so his wife was owning everything that he owned. So he starts kind of from the beginning in New York City, and it doesn't go as well as planned. They start having fights with Carrie. Carrie sees in him not the person she met before, but somebody new that she doesn't like. And we see this interpersonal connection. We see how Carrie changes when she's introduced to a higher society, how her manners change. We see Hurstwood, who started at the top of the ladder and then he suddenly is left with nothing. It's very true. It's a very real story. It's very realistic, and just looking at it makes me feel like, oh my God, that's me. And then when you're reading about people who lost all their wealth, like Hurstwood, it pains you. It makes you think that, oh my God, what if that happened to me? What if I end up like this? And it's just such a heartbreaking story, what happened to him. I definitely will be rereading the book. I had it on my shelves for like 5 years. I haven't touched it. I thought it's going to be boring, and then I read it and my life just changed. I loved it so much. The next book is Middlemarch by George Eliot, and this time I finally have a copy. This novel tells us about a little town or a village of Middlemarch in England, and about the lives of people who live there. We have a couple of different families that are main characters. Some of them are trying to find status. Some of them are trying to find true love. Some of them are trying to marry a person who has a purpose. And it's just so interesting to look at all these different people, see their thoughts, see how they develop, see their mistakes and how they understand or don't understand their mistakes and change them well or don't change them. This book was amazing. It's a true English classics, and I absolutely loved reading it. It can be a long read. It's a pretty long book, but I think once you start, once you dive deep into the book, the plot takes you so hard that you can't put it down. And the next book is Anne of Green Bagels. Anne of Green Bagels. And the next book is Anne of Green Gables, and I have to say that I only started reading this book after I watched the Netflix TV show, and I loved everything about this series, especially the first book, and it's just such a nice and wonderful story. I loved how Anne finds friends, how she doesn't lose her imagination even through all the hardships she had to go through. I love how she's creating stories and reads books and has her own opinion about things. She doesn't believe everything that she hears. She is in many places smarter than a lot of adults. She doesn't have any prejudices against, well, maybe a little bit like prejudices of a kid, but there is nothing like adults when they first see her and they think that, oh my God, she's gonna steal, she's not pretty because she's redheaded, she's an orphan girl, so what can come out of her? And I love how she slowly gains respect, how she finds friends, how she finds herself. And of course, I love the love line between her and Gilbert, which comes later in the books. And some of it is sad. I have to say the TV show didn't get to the part where they all grow up. The books do, and some parts are very sad. But I still think it's a wonderful, wonderful story. I wish I read it when I was younger. I was reading it when I was 20, and it was a little bit less interesting for me than it would be if I was 15, 14. But I still think it's an amazing book. I will be rereading it, and if I ever have daughters, I will be reading it to my daughters. The next book is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I talked about this book so much, but I just can't shut up. It's so good. I didn't expect much from the book. It's so thin, and it was written as a joke, as a challenge, but it's so amazing. It talks about how human can be a monster rather than an actual monster. It tells you how unfair human beings can be, how they can hurt others without even understanding that, how they think about themselves and not about the others, even those who they created. And it was just such a heartbreaking story. It was not scary. There were some moments when you start imagining all the scenes, all the dark scenes, and you're thinking, oh my God, this is so mysterious, this is so thrilling. But it's not a horror book. So if you're looking for a horror book, this is not the one to take. Maybe Dracula, I don't know, I want to try. I haven't read it yet, but it's on my plans for this year. But this turned out to be one of my favorite classics, even though I did not expect much from the book at all. And the next book, or rather a short story, is called The Adventure of the Speckled Band. This is one of the short stories about Sherlock Holmes, written by Conan Doyle. And this was the most exciting Sherlock Holmes story for me. I liked it more than anything else I read. It's the story about a young woman who is about to get married. She comes to Sherlock Holmes and tells him that a couple of years ago her sister passed away. She died mysteriously, and all she could say before she died is the Speckled Band. And she died a couple weeks before she got married. So now the second sister is getting married, and she's scared that the same thing is going to happen to her. And why she thinks that way is because her older sister said that she heard a light whistle a couple weeks before she died, and the younger sister starts hearing it too. So this is a very mysterious, interesting story. Of course, Sherlock Holmes takes the case. Of course, he brilliantly discovers who the murderer is. And this was my favorite story when I first read Sherlock Holmes. I was like 11 or 12, and since then it's my favorite one. I love it, and I actually should reread it probably. And the last book for today is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. It tells a story of a young married woman, Anna, who has a son. She falls in love with a young bachelor, Vronsky, and they start their romantic story. She doesn't want to go back to the family because she's not willing to give her love with Vronsky away, but she also can't get a divorce because it's going to be a disgrace not only to her but also to her husband and her son, and her husband says that he's not going to give her a divorce. She slowly goes crazy because she can't see her son. She doesn't understand what her life is going to be because, of course, she's now not in this circle of higher society, of nobility. She starts suspecting Vronsky of not loving her as much as he did in the beginning, or not much as she loves him. She thinks his love changed, and she thinks that it's not that serious for him as it is for her. So she loses everything if she goes away with him. He doesn't lose anything if he decides to break up with her and come back to the society. So this is the story of human feelings. It's a story about the relationships. It's the story of this hardship of making a decision. Of course, you have other characters that Anna is compared to. You have a different couple that, according to Tolstoy, is doing everything right, is a good couple, as opposed to Anna and Vronsky. It's a very interesting book, full of feelings, of beauty, of tragedy. So just like Leo Tolstoy does, he creates a masterpiece, and I absolutely loved it. I only read it last year, and I'm still under a huge impression. I will absolutely be rereading this book, and it definitely goes into the list of my favorite ones. And that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please let me know what your favorite classics is, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.